Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're watching another episode of Overbooked, the series where I talk about every single book on my shelf because my grandfather decided I was going to do this and now I'm wrapped up in a scheme much bigger than I ever thought I could be. As promised last week, today we are talking about, this is the terrible way to hold these, but we're talking about N.K. Jemisin's Inheritance Trilogy. That's a little bit tidier. So I did buy all three of these myself, I think. Book one may have been gifted. I can't quite remember, but not by the publisher. Regardless of where books are coming from, nobody's paying me to talk about books, and all opinions are my own. I'm going to keep this as spoiler-free as humanly possible. If you do want to go into this knowing absolutely nothing, click away now. And also, I will link the story graph for at least the first one below so that you can check out any content warnings for yourself. I think that's everything I wanted to say. The dog is about to interrupt. This is just where we're at in life. I'm going to move the coffee from the floor. Okie dokie, The Inheritance Trilogy. Book 1, The 100,000 Kingdoms, came out in 2010. Book 2, The Broken Kingdoms, came out in 2010. Book 3, The Kingdom of Gods, came out in 2011. Yes, 3 books in 2 years. This is all stickers. I bought these secondhand. There is also a novella, which, in preparation for this video, I wasn't planning on reading. And then Angela said, Judith, you should really read the novella. And that's called The Awakened Kingdom, and that came out in 2014. It's sort of part of the trilogy. You can not read it. It's a good time if you liked the trilogy. It's a nice extra thing. N.K. Jemisin, if you haven't already heard of her, is just a fantastic author. Wonderful. Has written heaps of stuff. I have a video up for... I reviewed it last week. The Dreamblood duology. That's up. Fantastic. Love, 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 love. You should check her out. I'll link her website below. Allow me to read you the blurb of book 1, and then I will talk a little bit about the rest of the trilogy in a broader sense. Gods and mortals, power and love, death and revenge, she will inherit them all. I've never heard these names said out loud, so we're gonna live our best life. Yen Dar is an outcast from the barbarian north, but when her mother dies under mysterious circumstances, she is summoned to the majestic city of Sky, a palace above the clouds where the lives of gods and mortals intertwine. There, to her shock, Yen is named one of the potential heirs to the king, but the throne of the 100,000 kingdoms is not easily won, and Yen is thrust into a vicious power struggle with a pair of cousins she never knew she had. As she fights for her life, she draws ever closer to the secrets of her mother's death and her family's bloody history. They're on 2 shelves, you'll have to deal with it. But I wouldn't get caught up in that plot, because that is book 1, and book 2 and 3 are both in themselves separate narratives, so we follow different characters in different stories. They are all interconnected. They do all follow similar characters or the same characters in some circumstances, but the main characters change. The narrative changes, the perspective changes, the plot changes. They're 3 very different books all in the same world. They do fit together as a trilogy. They are telling a narrative of sorts, but it is more like 3 separate tales within a world that follow on from one another. So while they are all separate, I do think you need to read all 3 of them, and you kind of need to read them in order, or you're going to spoil previous things for you and you'll be very confused. And given that I think this is quite a confusing series anyway, you want to give yourself the best chance of success. My biggest pro, I think, for this series, or my biggest thing that comes to mind when I think of this series is, and Jemisin's writing in general, is that these have really unique narrative... It's not even narrative structure, it's narrators and who they are narrating to. And I've been doing a fair amount of thinking around this subject lately in terms of even books that are third person have a narrator. I was reading something about it somewhere, and I find that really interesting, and I think N.K. Jemisin plays with that idea really well and uses it as another method of building anticipation and telling stories. So book 1, we have some sections that are in second person. I think the same in book 2. Book 3 is even more different, and it's not super obvious what's going on at all times, which I think can make it a little bit confusing at times. But I think it's really a fascinating way of telling a story, and I think it really works in this setting, particularly because things are generally just a little bit weird and outside of time a little bit. It's a bit confusing, but it really works. And yeah, this interesting narrative and narrator structure that I think Jemisin relies on in a lot of her work is really prevalent here, and I think you can really see how that developed into later works, and just it's not something I realised was something that featured so much in Jemisin's work until I'd read this series back to back with Dreamblood and thought about some other things that they've written. So if you're interested in exploring different kinds of narrators, this is a great set of stories to go with. Alongside that narration that I said was kind of driving this interesting plot, there is just an interesting plot going on. I think that the 3 stories are very different, as I've said, and book 1 has this kind of politics succession alongside some other conspiracy stuff going on. Book 2 is different kinds of conspiracy again, but in a very different way, and there's some magic happening and so such. Book 3, how do I even start to describe book 3 without giving anything away? Just a real exploration of immortality is what I will say on that one. All 3 of them so different, all 3 of them so good. All 3 of them, and maybe this is a personal experience, I found that it took me till a good chunk of the way through the book before I was like, okay, I'm fully here. I'm ready, let's go. Book 3 less so, which is why it's my favourite of the 3. My rainbow flag fell down. Not the homophobia. So yes, we have 3 very fascinating plots. If you like intricate plots, I think this is going to be a series for you. Without being icky about it, Jemisin really pushes what are relationships and what do relationships mean to the people in this world and in this culture. And I think that that's part of what Jemisin's very good from writing from a different cultural viewpoint, not just in the sense of like different from white people, but in the sense of I have created a culture and this is their opinion on this. And I think that's especially interesting in this series because we are dealing with people who are immortal. So you do have characters that are childlike but are technically millennia old, and I think Jemisin does really interesting stuff with that. And sometimes it is uncomfortable, and sometimes you're thinking, oh, I don't know how I feel about that. But it's done deliberately. It's not done to just be like, haha, I think this will be fun. But it's done as like a really interesting exploration, and I think it really adds to the idea of the otherworldliness of those characters. And it just, it's really interesting reading, and I'd really like to read them again with that mindset on. In fact, read a lot of Jemisin's work with that mindset of like, what's she doing with relationships? How is she exploring this? I personally feel like this series feels very different from other fantasy trilogies that I have read for multiple reasons, partly because they are such different books, but also in terms of the world and the themes and the ideas that are being explored. I don't think I've read anything that I would go, oh, that was just like the Inheritance trilogy. I don't believe I have ever done that. That's a selling point for me because I like to read things that feel different. That can make it quite difficult because it pushes you out of your comfort zone a little bit, but it's still a hugely enjoyable reading experience, and I think if you're looking for something a bit new, this might be what I would go with. With all that in mind, I think I mentioned this earlier in the video, a lot's happened since then. I do think these are a little bit hard to get into, partly because of that narrative style, partly because there's just a lot to wrap your head around very quickly, and you kind of have to just let it take you where it will and then figure it out afterwards. Like at this point, now I've read all 3 plus the novella, I think I could probably make sense of book 1, which some people really don't enjoy. They like to make sense of things from the off. I'm okay with a reread every now and then to broaden my understanding. I've reread the Chorus of Dragons series so many times, and I'm just beginning to understand what's happening. I'm having a great time with it though. So yeah, if you're looking for something that's really, accessible and easy to get into, this might not be what you want to go with. But if you're looking for something you can really delve into and like wrap your head around, I think it's a good time. And obviously, if you are a person who really doesn't want to explore those kind of like strange relationship ideas, if that's going to make you uncomfortable, if that's not something you're interested in, equally, you might want to just try this and see how it goes and then decide from there. Comparisons, other things you might want to read. Very difficult when I've just said I've not really read anything like this, but in terms of narrative structure being interesting, Chorus of Dragons, I've already mentioned it in this video, but it is what I bring up as a interesting narrative thing, particularly in the later books. I think the first book is the weakest of all of them, which is really disappointing because it's where you kind of have to start. But particularly as we get into book 3, book 4, stuff's getting very interesting. Very excited for that series to be finished next year. This year. In terms of new releases, I was thinking, partly because I was reading this at the same time as I was scripting this video, but Daughter of the Moon Goddess is a YA new release that includes some elements of that fish out of water plotline that's in this, just if you're looking for something new to read. It's good fun, I've just finished it. And if you're looking for more Jemisin, I mentioned this last week, I really think read Broken Earth. It's such a good trilogy, utterly phenomenal. Need to put it in my trilogies video in just a moment that I will be filming, so if I look like this in another thumbnail, that's what I'm talking about. Overall, I think before I'd read the novella, book 3 would have been my favourite. I think it has the best plot, it has my favourite characters, it is the longest of all of them, but I think that helped, and it just really clicked for me, and maybe that was the progression of reading all 3 of them. I finally really got what I was getting out of these books. But having read the novella, I think the novella is actually my favourite. It's lovely, it has all of the above, and it's also much shorter, so you kind of have to get to the point a bit more. Maybe that was what it was, I don't know. But I really recommend reading these. I would say don't go into it expecting like a nice, easy, wonderful, happy frolic time. I think you need to give it more thought than that, but I actually think that's a really good thing to do. I wouldn't do it all the time. I wouldn't do it in all of my periods of reading. I read this over the Christmas holidays, so I had a lot of time to be able to give over to it, and it was enjoyable. I wouldn't necessarily have had the same experience, I don't think, if I'd read it during quite a stressful period in my life. Maybe. So it's not my favourite series of all time, it's not my favourite trilogy of all time, but I think it has its place on my shelves and I'm excited to do a reread of it at some point in the future. Have you read these? Do you have plans to? Do you have any favourite fish out of water kind of stories, or stories that deal with immortals and the consequences of immortality? Plonk those recommendations down in the comments below. While you're down there commenting, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. You can also follow me on social media, come hang out on Discord, and this is the first video I am filming since I launched my Patreon, so I haven't worked out what I'm going to say about it at the end yet. But if you would like early access to my videos or exclusive content or live streams, you can join my Patreon. All the details are below. It supports the channel, it supports me, you're the best. So thank you to my patrons who make me feel even more loved and appreciated. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one. It's gonna be some bloopers now. Can you not tread on the keyboard? That would be really helpful if you could not do that. Eyelash in my eye, eyelash in my eyelash in my eyelash in my eye. That is my alarm to put a video up online because of my Patreon. I can't schedule them. So let's do that very quickly on camera.